when the season started, we wondered what was the mix of nostalgia and productivity for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we were joking around, having the debate about should he start opening day?
Mm-hmm.
Should he bat at all against right-handed pitching? And then remember, he started out pretty strong, but then he hit a lull there. He hits a lull. We're thinking, oh man, this whole nostalgia thing isn't working out great. Not just with Albert. Remember, at the same time, Yadi's struggling. Yadi's injured. We're thinking, man, are the Cardinals going to be able to meld this final season, the farewell tour, with winning? And then look at Albert now. Post All-Star break, it's not just this fun, nostalgic story. Obviously, he got 700 homers. It's fantastic. This is a dude you are counting on every single night to produce in your lineup. And when you look at the previous series there versus the Dodgers, and Ali is starting to tinker with Albert batting second,
mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that with some of the Cardinals' batting order issues before that. Now, I didn't know he was going to move Albert to second, but I'm thinking if you're having issues with table setters, with Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson, maybe it just makes sense to move all three of those dudes up, right? Maybe it makes sense to move Goldie, Arenado, Pujols all up and just hit him 2, 3, 4. At least you potentially can steal an extra plate appearance for all those guys. And I'm saying that because you don't really have natural table setters.
Well, I think that if you look back, if Mike Schilt was still managing this team, I think you would have seen a lot more often Goldie hitting higher up. You know, he was a big proponent of Goldie hitting second, setting the table from the 2 spot, getting more at bats. And, there's been a little divided on, what's the best way to structure a batting lineup in the quote unquote modern day of baseball, whether it's the cleanup guy's less important because he gets fewer at bats or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at this team, I just can't get away from this. I still look at what difference would it be if you got the Tyler O'Neill that you expected and what that really means for the lineup. Because in my mind, he's the prototypical 5 guy. I mean, you're not looking for him to make too much contact, but he's going to drive people in and he's going to be able to reset the table. Albert has, in a way, become that guy. I mean, not the at-bats for a 30-homer season like O'Neill got last year, but, I mean, he's become the 5-man that the team needed. And regardless of whether you thought he was going to hit 700 or what he was going to do this year, nobody in April, was looking at that and saying you're going to get the Pujols you got in August, which was the one from 15 years ago.
What do you guys think about Tommy Edman being the 9th hitter and Donovan being the leadoff hitter? They tried that last game.
I am the biggest proponent of that. I'm the biggest proponent of that. I think that Tommy Edman is a guy that's not going to be your biggest on-base guy, but I think Donovan's setting the table better. He's hitting the ball gap-to-gap better. I get a lot of new age Matt Carpenter vibes from Donovan.
Yeah.
He's popping in. He can kind of be whatever you need him to be. He can play all over the place. He's a guy I think you plan around next year. And maybe you don't plan around him as, every day, this spot, that spot, but he's a guy I think that helps you not have to make some bigger decisions. My caveat being, as long as one of those decisions is still to move Paul DeJong away from swinging a bat for your baseball team.
Even as much as there's been this season with the storylines and everything, I do think that Donovan, in a way, has impressed me the most because he was one of those guys. You see guys come into the league early on in their career, and I think they're just, they're running on high where they're going to bat 350 or whatever their first month, and then they dwindle down to batting 250. And you kind of saw that with him early on in the season, and he's picking it back up. I didn't think personally that Brendan Donovan would be the starting or the leadoff batter in a September game for the Cardinals. If you would have told me that back when he was kind of having his down year or like his down month, I guess that was back in maybe June or July, he was starting to kind of come back to life a little bit because he started off so well.
Well, Brendan Donovan has become the guy that I think everybody, in a different way, everybody expected the impact for Nolan Gorman to make this year.
Right.
He's in there every day. He's swinging on that side of the plate. He's giving you a lefty bat. He's, he's obviously not impacting it with the power the same way, but this is a guy that's almost a 4-WAR player this year. Nobody guessed that. Nobody would have anticipated that again. And in some ways, he's also filling in the Dylan Carlson gap a little bit too. And that's kind of the purpose and the role that you look for Carlson to carry. But, again, baseball's weird, man, and it's a long season, and you get people to work in like this. I mean, Donovan was a guy that hit 300 last year at Memphis. He hit 300 over the course of 3 different levels last year. So, I mean, maybe you just kind of caught a shooting star here, and you're going to see – because I think he's going to finish top 3 in NL Rookie of the Year. I think that's a pretty safe bet at this point.
Our text line, 855-282-8255. Gio and O'Fallon on Albert. I think he's going to get to 7:05. Gio is prolific this morning. Seth, sounding good, brother. Rock it out. I also have to say, see, when we were messing around with Seth about bringing in the show, I thought we were just going to do it to bring in. Seth wants to host the whole show.
Well, listen.
Hey, it's all good. As long as Dave Zobrist doesn't mind, I think, hey, it makes my life easier.
Yeah,
I can monitor the text line. I got the live reads, but I like that Seth is pumped up for this right now.
Yeah, the only time that Dave texts me is usually if he's got extra Cardinal tickets. So I don't think he's asking for me to not host the show.
So Gio also on the text line, 855-282-8255. Get him in. Charlie, what about Brendan Donovan? He is a leadoff choice, 100%. And for me, like if you look at the lineup the Cardinals rolled out for the series finale against the Dodgers, so Donovan 1, Newt 2, you went Goldie 3, Arenado, cleanup, Yepez hitting 5th. Obviously it's different with a lefty in there. If you have Albert, you had Corey Dickerson, Dylan Carlson, Yachty, Tommy Edman. And I just wonder come playoff time, as much as I like Lars Nootbaar, and Lars Nootbaar he's been streaky, where he's been really, really good. For about a month there, Lars Nootbaar was fantastic. Fell off a little bit, came back the last week or so. But when the playoffs start, do you want Lars Nootbaar batting second, or would you prefer moving up the big dogs? And to me, it's moving up the big dogs. Tyler O'Neill's injured right now. Hopefully we'll be back. He's got the hamstring. We'll see what happens there. You still have about 10 days or so till you're playing a playoff game. But for me, when I look at what could really hurt the Cardinals in the playoffs, it's just that lineup length that we were hoping that an O'Neill, that a Dylan Carlson, Corey Dickerson would just kind of lengthen out that 2 through 6, 7 spot. We don't see that right now with the Cardinals. I mean, you're loving Goldie, Arenado, Pujols, obviously, but I think on a nightly basis, Ollie is really kind of trying to figure out 1, 2, and 6, 7, 8, 9. Where to me, I think you set it and forget it with Brendan Donovan at this point at the leadoff spot, and I have no problem moving up the 2, 3, 4 guys, moving up Goldie. If you want to hit Goldie 2, if you want to hit Arenado 3, Albert 4, figure it out, lefty righty, but. I don't know, Dylan Carlson right now, question mark. Lars Nootbaar, I really like him batting 8th in a playoff game. I don't know if I love him batting 2nd.
He's serviceable at that level in the lineup in my mind. A guy that they haven't really hit up there very much that I'd at least be curious to see over the last week or so might be Corey Dickerson. He's a guy that's done it in the past. He's been a top of the lineup type of hitter, too guy. On base percentage isn't great. I mean, he's not, he's sub 300 in that. He's not taking a ton of walks and doing things. But I want somebody who's going to capitalize on swinging in that number 2 spot. You're going to get pitches in front of Goldie and Arenado, so put somebody in there that you think might be able to go for it there. But yeah, I think that's really where you're the most exposed from Dylan Carlson not being the guy that you needed for him to be this year. Was never sold on him as the leadoff guy. I've thought that's been something they just didn't have an answer for with the way this team is constructed and something they need to keep chasing potentially. But man, I don't see Lars as being a guy I want to have number 2. There's too much. It's either high payoff, no payoff in there. And that's the type of guy I'd rather have being down in that 7 spot in front of where you got Yachty at. So maybe you got an opportunity to get somebody on second in case he makes contact and you can drive him in.
And Lars has sneaky pop.
Yeah.
I mean, he's slugging 458. So he can also run into one. So, whereas maybe it makes more sense Lars hitting that 6, 7 spot.
So with that being said, is Tyler O'Neill's comeback still vital to what this team's potential is in the postseason?
Look, anything you get from Tyler O'Neill is gravy. I mean, if he could get anywhere close to what we saw last year, and that might be a pipe dream at this point. I just think if you get a solid, average offensive player, if he can be slightly above average, I think at this point in the season you're going to take that. Entering this year, I think when you looked at Tyler O'Neill and what he did last year, finishing 8th in the MVP, it was going to be really, really difficult for Tyler O'Neill to ever replicate that. Now, I don't think he was going to fall off this much. I mean, look at this dude was 148 OPS plus last year, essentially 50% better than league average. And right now he's at 101. So look, if you're taking a league average hitter, it's not what you expected. I think you would have hoped for at least, pushing 115, 120. But at the end of the day, through all the injuries, 14 homers, 58 RBIs, when you look at the slash line, that's where, look, 228 batting average, he still doesn't get on base. 308 on base, slugging close to 400. But if he can just give us a nice little uptick for the postseason, he can still be a guy that helps them win games, for sure.
So can we do a little woulda, coulda here real quick? We got time, I think. We got a little bit of time left in the show.
We have nothing but time, baby.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. So now we can move forward. Should the Cardinals have maybe given a higher level look to Jordan Walker this year, considering what you're looking at right now and considering the fact that it does look like you still need to have some at-bats, or do you not want to throw a guy into a pennant chase like that?
That's a great question. That would be a real fast track for Jordan Walker. He's super talented, but it's not like we haven't seen guys who come up who are young. I know, like Juan Soto was really young. I'm not saying Jordan Walker's going to be Juan Soto, but when you look at his track to eventually the big leagues, I would think Jordan Walker's going to be in the big leagues at some point next year. Maybe it's a September call-up, maybe it's earlier. But a guy who, remember, drafted during COVID, so he had the whole alternate camp situation. Last year, in between A-ball, high A. So this year, at Double A, the entire season here, having a really good year, 306 average, 388 on base, slugging 510. He's got 19 bombs, 68 RBIs. So Jordan Walker, 20 years old. We've seen 20-year-olds in the big leagues for sure. It would have been very interesting to see that happen. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's a little early for a guy to essentially just skip AAA whatsoever, go right to the big leagues and say, help us in a playoff.
Come in and be a vital part of what we got. Yeah, I get it. And that's one of the things where I look at and I say, man, this year, I think the thing that surprised me the most this year at the Cardinals is how aggressive they have been with their young guys. Because that's not the hallmark of this organization in the past, is to bring up a bunch of your top prospects, play them all, get them in there, get them looks. I think that of their top 10 prospects, there's probably only 2 or 3 of them that didn't really get a chance to make that move this year. But they've been pretty aggressive with guys, even if it's been in the minors and putting them in position. So that's what I really wonder if, as I look at this team and I look at next year, I wonder how many people are going to be in that playoff lineup that are a part of your target opening day lineup in 23. Because I think that there's some changes that they're going to have to make just due for some of the reasons that we talked about now.
How many times do you see a player get called up to, and it's sometimes prematurely, they get called up and they're these high prospects. Nolan Gorman's a good example. They get called up, they got all this hype, rightfully so, and then they struggle in the big leagues, and then they get sent back down, and then people say, oh, well, now his confidence is dropped. Do you feel like that with Jordan Walker, or do you think that he's kind of an exception?
I've always thought that getting in somebody's head and saying that their confidence dropped is a little presumptuous to me.
Sure.
We don't know what that guy's doing. He could go up there and still be swinging for the racks no matter what. I think that the main thing I look at with Jordan Walker is he's 20 years old. And he hasn't played a game at AAA yet. Maybe he never does. I don't know. But maybe they just fast track him over there. I remember when Mike Trout came up. Big deal, to say the least. It was not an overnight sensation for Trout when he came up initially. I think he hit just over 200 and went back down. So, that can happen to the best of them. I look at the Mariners a couple years ago, Jared Kelenic. Jared Kelenic was a superstar prospect. He came up, and it did not hit.
He ruined everybody's fantasy team for about 2 straight years.
I held him, and it was a really bad look. But then you see some teams that bait guys pretty long, like Adley Rutschman over in Baltimore this year. And he's come up and he's been a stud since he's got up.
It goes back even to Puig.
Yeah,
when Puig first came up.
So that's what I mean. Puig is a great example of what I'm talking about here. Is that sometimes you bring up guys and it doesn't matter where they play at. We spent all year talking about this guy, so let's keep talking about it. Albert Pujols. When Albert Pujols came up, the thought was, oh, man, he's really swinging the bat. He's had a huge spring. But can we play him over Bobby Bonilla, J.D. Drew? Craig Paquette was in the mix then. Placido Polanco was in the mix. Like, where do we get him at bats at? And I think that the fact that you have the DH now and that you do have outfield issues on a team like this, I really think that even though it's not going to be this year, this is super hypothetical we're talking about, I'm really interested to see what that means for next year around their confidence for Walker and how much of a real shot he gets in the spring, because I do think that the Cardinals still have to do something about this lineup somewhere. But the caveat to it is, what do you do that doesn't block all the young guys that you've got? So you sign a guy to a 3 or a 4 year contract, you're making a different decision to do something somewhere else. But they've got to do something in outfield. I think we talked about this either last week or yesterday or whatever. There's been no continuity in the outfield for the Cardinals for years. I mean, I think that probably the guy that's played the most years in a row there has been Dexter Fowler, and he was in and out. You know, I mean, he played 2 different positions. He didn't even finish up where it was at. They've got to figure out a way to get this thing set.
And it's crazy that that's the question mark, not just right now for the playoffs, but for next year, because entering this season, you thought, man, you had the outfield of the present, of the future. These dudes are young. Many of them are controllable or very controllable. And then you just think about the Cardinals' outfield issues of trying to find that outfield. It seems like for close to a decade. For different reasons, obviously, the tragedy with Oscar Taveras. But back then when you envisioned the Piscotty, the Grichuk, the Taveras passes away. You go for Jason Hayward, try to sign him. You know, Piscotty has the bad year. He has his mom getting sick. You move him. Randall Grichuk. Randall Grichuk is a really solid, nice player in the big leagues, but, you know, I don't think Randall Grichuk ever kind of became that really middle-of-the-order hitter on a good team. Look, if he's playing back in the day in Toronto and Colorado, he's going to hit 25 homers. He's going to strike out a ton. But then you saw this outfield and this outfield defense last year, and you saw Harrison Bader starting to figure it out offensively last season. You saw Tyler O'Neill really figure it out offensively last season, and Dylan Carlson just sneakily just kind of kept improving. He threw a ton of dudes out last year, a bunch of outfield assists, and then you're looking at that trio and you're thinking, all right, Tyler O'Neill, he's approaching arbitration. You'd think two years at least with Harrison Bader. Dylan Carlson is controllable for forever now. One of the big reasons that he wasn't included in any type of Juan Soto package. And here we are now. Harrison Bader gone. Tyler O'Neill, you're just wondering, is this dude wound too tight? I'm not saying in his head. I'm talking about, is he wound too tight? Is that man just so muscle bound that he's always going to have these hamstring issues? He's always going to have these muscle issues. You just wonder if that's something that he's ever going to kick. And then Dylan Carlson, look, he's been banged up this year. He's still kind of around league average offensively. But I think most people looked at Dylan Carlson this season and said, this is where he takes the next step. Mm-hmm. This is where he's potentially 20% above league average. This is where he can be a number 2 hitter or a number 5 hitter, or even at the beginning of the year if you're tinkering with him at the leadoff spot. And at this point, he's one of the guys in the mixed bag of where do we bat him in the lineup? Because the lineup really doesn't make a lot of sense. You have to kind of every night look at it and figure it out, but it's not just this batting order that falls in place.
I got a question, and I know that it's a little early for trivia, so I'll push it off. When was the last time that the Cardinals had a homegrown outfielder that made the All-Star team?
That's a great question.
I think that...
Well, did Tyler O'Neill, did he not make it last year?
I don't know. Did he? Did he make it?
I mean, Tyler O'Neill was 8th in the MVP.
But I thought it was a second-half push. I could be wrong. I'd be interested. I'd still shift it to, if it was Tyler O'Neill, when was it before then? Because, you know, again, it goes to a lot of the churn that we've had here with it. Sethy, we got an All-Star appearance for T. O'Neill?
Tyler O'Neill was not.
He did not make it
an All-Star last year.
So I thought that his big push was the second half push last year, where he really went crazy, especially during the kickoff of the winning streak. But, you know, I know Ryan Ludwig made it back in the day, but I mean, that was a trade piece that came in.
That would have been 2008.
Yes.
Ryan Ludwig with one of the sneakier great seasons that you forget about.
Yeah.
I want to say about 37 bombs, 114-ish RBI.
He was the Pujols caddy before Holiday came over. But it's been an absurdly long time since the Cardinals created had an all-star that came from with inside the system.
So here's Tyler O'Neill splits last year. And I remembered he was really good in September. I didn't remember he was this good.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler O'Neill last year in the final month, so we're talking September, October of 2021, had 13 bombs, Jeez. 13 homers, 30 RBIs, had 5 stolen bases, and slashed .328 average, .377 on base. He slugged .731 in the final month of the season.
That
so as you said,
wild.
He just ran it up there in the final month.
So Alan Craig made the All-Star game in 2013, but I believe that wasn't as an outfielder. I believe that was first baseman
first base.
at that point, a little swing around. I'm back into the early 2000s now, and nobody's come up yet. 1997, I've got Ray Langford. That might be it.
How about Albert as an outfielder? At some point there? That's from the text line, Jack.
In 01, was he an out? Albert was like a utility guy that first year. Where does somebody need to hit from today? He's going to play there between third base, between first base, between outfield. I'm talking about somebody that you rolled out there. It was an everyday outfield and a fixture of your lineup that you didn't have to trade for, and it's an all-star. I don't even want caliber. I want all-star player. Just once. I'm not saying perennial. Just one-time all-star player that you grew up yourself. It's a weird albatross for the Cardinals that they've had that much turnover, especially of late, and haven't been able to acquire at least a guy that can stay at that level.
I think what's an interesting conversation here is we're having two different discussions. We're talking about the end of this season and the playoffs, which really matter, and then of course the future with the lineup. And I'm really high on these Cardinal position players for the future, right? I think a lot of these guys were dependent on too much this season to come up immediately and help out.
Yeah.
Now, Brendan Donovan did that. Remember, Nolan Gorman was pretty dang good for a couple months. Juan Yepez has been productive when healthy. When you start to roll out all those names I just mentioned, Nolan Gorman, Juan Yepez, Brendan Donovan, and let's throw Jordan Walker in there, because Jordan Walker, I think, will make his Major League debut next year at some point.
I'm going to say before the All-Star game.
Look, it would not be crazy, because if you look at Albert's track, and I'm not trying to say they're the exact same player at all, but remember that 2000 year, Albert played most of the season at Peoria. He played almost the entire year at Peoria.
Yep.
Tore the cover off the baseball, went up there to high A for a bit, and finished at Triple A just for a few games. So he at the end of the season was moved up. Jordan Walker, if he were to play this entire year, he plays the entire year at Double A. It would not be crazy at all for Jordan Walker to have a really good spring and stick.
Can I get you to buy a little bit of Chris Bryant spring breakout from Jordan Walker next year, where you got to make a business decision?
Yeah, and I'm not predicting that, but that would not be crazy. It would not be crazy for a 20-year-old super stud who tore the cover off the ball in Double A, who's already going to be in the big leagues at some point next year. Let's say there's an injury, and let's say Jordan Walker's hitting .460 in spring. That's a really tough call to make.
My expectations for Walker, and I'll leave him here because I do want to focus on who this team's going to be over the next 2 to 3 weeks. My expectations for him, and looking at the kind of guy he can fit into pretty quickly, is Chris Bryant, Ryan Braun. Minus all the Ryan Braun things. Minus that part.
Minus trying to ruin a drug tester's life.
Yeah. Ryan Braun plus integrity is what I look at, the type of impact that Jordan Walker could have. And both of those are two guys that came in and said, nah, it's my time. I'm going to be a part of this right now. You got to make a call.
Yeah, and I believe that Chris Bryant was called up in the month of April when he did that.
Well, and it was because there was nearly a fight in the streets for him to get up, because they took him down to the minors. He had 3 home runs in 7 games, and they're like, what are you doing? It was after I think he hit maybe 8 bombs in the spring.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he's not ready yet. He hit 43 home runs the year before in the minors, and they sent him down.
And that was a joke. I mean, that was obvious service time manipulation. He filed a grievance. That's another part of that. You can't tell me that did not start the seeds plant the seeds of discontent between Chris Bryant and the Cubs organization.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I think...
Thank you, Cubs.
Looking back, maybe the Cubs not signing Chris Bryant will end up being a really good call for them. But that was ruined early, because that story was huge. There was no way you could explain there was no way you could describe or justify in any way, shape, or form that season Chris Bryant going to the minor leagues. That was the most obvious example of service time manipulation we've ever seen, because that dude was off the charts the previous year in the minors. He was a super high draft pick, and he was destroying the baseball, and you had a need for his position.
Yeah.
Like that was one where it was so obvious that you actually had to change the rules of baseball based on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Kyle texts in and says if Jordan Walker can work through the hole that he has in the lower outside of the zone, then he'll be ready for the majors. Not there yet, but certainly still incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I think with Jordan Walker, what's going to be very interesting, it won't surprise me one bit. He's going to hit. Now, whether he hits for a high average, he's going to hit. He's going to hit for some power. Now, is it 20 home runs? Is he going to be able to get up to 35 home runs? Because I think he has that in him. That's a big boy. That's the thing. He's 6'5", and I think when you look at his build, Jordan Walker is a dude who can probably carry 235 pounds, 240 pounds well, right? So it's, to me, where are you going to play him? Here's a guy who comes up as a third baseman. Well, hell, he's blocked for 5 years by Nolan Arenado. Yeah. Well, guess what? Where else would you maybe want to play him? Oh, first base. He's blocked for the next, 3 years by Goldie. I think
my opinion is right field.
Yeah, corner outfield.
Yeah. Just stick him out in right field, figure it out. For all accounts, he's a big guy. I know a couple people that followed him as a younger guy and things like that, knew he was going to fill out, but it's an athletic big guy. So I'm thinking, Stanton, who is a good athlete. He's not a base stealing athlete, but was a good athlete in the peak of his time. Aaron Judge is a fantastic athlete and can move around. I don't think that Walker's going to be the defender that Judge is, but I think you can put him out there, and that makes sense. The bigger question is that I would have is that do you externally add to the Cardinals outfield outside of the organization this winter or not? So that you're not in a position where you're saying, can we hit Lars or Corey Dickerson second? Will that work? Can you move up Carlson? Is it just the fact that this just wasn't the year? Like, when did we get to the failure to launch point for Dylan Carlson?
Oh, they're going to give him a lot of opportunities. Again, he's under control for a long, long time. I hate to give you this answer, but it's what I think is going to happen. You're going to get another year where Tyler O'Neill's going to get every opportunity. Dylan Carlson is going to get every opportunity. Hell, Lars Nootbaar could be the guy who has a shot to start at the beginning of the year. Throw Jordan Walker in there if he forces their issue. And Cardinal fans won't like to hear this. Remember, you got Juan Yepez, who's not really a defender. He's more of a DH, but to me, I think what the Cardinals will do is they'll get another Corey Dickerson type veteran bat. I think it'll be somebody else like that. I don't see the Cardinals bringing in a surefire starting outfielder.
Is there a way that Yepez and Gorman both get in the starting lineup next year consistently?
I think Gorman's got every chance on earth to hit his way into the lineup every day. I still think that Nolan Gorman would get a preferential opportunity to be great here against any other young infielder that they've got. I think that he'll get that opportunity to do so. I could see a world where he is playing a lot of second base, where Tommy Edmonds playing shortstop more often than not, because I'm praying that the DeYoung experiment comes to a close this offseason. That would make me very, very happy. I think you're going to see a number of people that you look up and you're like, whoa, they traded who? I think it's going to be one of those winners where they're wheeling and dealing and looking for some more certainty.
Text line 855-282-8255. The all-knowing expert says Dave Winfield played outfield. Walker can do it.
Great call.
I totally think Walker. He's an athlete, and also on the text line, Joe Boozrum, Walker also had 22 stolen bases this year. The big man can move. Yeah. By the way, when I said this man's going to keep growing, I wasn't trying to say he's going to be sloppy by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
He's an athlete.
He's like a tight end.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is this dude is 20, and he's 6'5", 220 pounds.
Yeah.
He's not getting smaller.
No.
It would not surprise me if in the next 2 to 3 years he's 235, 240. And that's not sloppy weight. But that's a dude who probably down the road profiles more. Like, I think if Goldie wasn't here, he's your first baseman in the future. And maybe he still is.
I think he still is. I think he is your first baseman in the future.
Goldie's not leaving anytime soon, but he's not going to be here, let's say, for the next 5 years. Now, he might, 3 years from now, Walker could be your first baseman.
How old is Goldie right now? He's 34? So when Jordan Walker's 25, Paul Goldschmidt will be 39. I mean, the future is still pretty bright for guys at 25. So, I mean, yeah, I think that both of those things can live next to each other. Far be it from anybody to move from the outfield to first base. I mean, that he definitely will swing. He profiles as a guy that will swing a bat at a first all-star first base level. And it just gives you some succession plan there. But, you know, to go back to the whole thing and to bring it back to this postseason, the Cardinals are going to need somebody to get in the zone. They're going to need somebody that can get in that outfield to just get locked in and just become a different guy. And why not Lars Nootbaar? You know, he doesn't hit for a huge average, but he gets on base 34% of the time. I mean, that's helpful. That profiles as a number 2 guy. But what you got to do is that the swings and the misses, if you're counting Brendan Donovan to be a high singles on base, put contact, get on base guy, then you've got a guy that swings and misses, and then you get to Goldschmidt and Arenado, that's a gap. You got to be moving people into scoring position to maximize what those two guys can get, because there's no team in the postseason, I would say, at any level, maybe with the exception of the Indians. I'm sorry.
How dare you?
I am sorry.
How dare you? Hold on a second. We're talking about the American League Central Division champion Guardians.
I'm sorry. That's on me, and I apologize.
Dang you.
To the state of Ohio, on my behalf, Charlie Marlowe.
Thank you.
My one of my 2 favorite Ohioans that I know.
So who else? LeBron?
Orlando. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I count the 2 of you as being very treasured friends to me, and I'm sorry that I offended your state.
Well, thank you very much. And listen, Orlando, it's not going to disappoint me or sadden me if you put Orlando Pace, the Hall of Fame football player and Super Bowl champion, above me in your friend ranking, because
I don't break guys out like that. I don't make a batting lineup of buddies. That's not what I do. That's just not how I roll. But I don't think there's any team that relies more on 2 guys than the Cardinals do. They're almost like a basketball team where it's like these 2 guys got to be clicking or it's going to be a tough day. And you hope Albert continues to do what he's doing there. I don't see any reason why he would stop. But in the playoffs, you lose some of the flexibility of being able to kind of sit them again. You got to play your best guys every night. You can't take the day off against the 98-mile-an-hour righty and still have that same protection.
And so Paul Goldschmidt just turned 35, under contract for 23 and 24. So 24 will be his age 36 season. He's making $26 million a year. The way Goldie, though, I see him aging well.
Yeah.
And I see him as a guy who probably hangs around for at least one more 1-year deal, if not a little 2-year deal. So I don't think that 2024 is the last season Paul Goldschmidt plays with the Cardinals. I think, look, that's another dude who's a sneaky athlete, base runner, defensively, really smart guy. Even if his bat speed falls off a little bit as he ages, which happens to everybody, I still think that dude's going to be well above league average, I would think, as a 37-year-old.
Goldschmidt is one of the main guys that you would profile as saying, oh, it's great the DH is here now because you get more years from him now at this point. Like, he's been one of the most durable players in all of baseball, you know, throughout his career. He's played 93% of the available games in his career. That is insane, especially in an era where you see more days down and more guys not playing. I think that this year he's shown if he's not going to play the field, he's going to DH, but Goldie's going to be in there. He's at 145 games this year. And you hope as the guy gets older that doesn't catch up with him, but I see no signs to believe that, and I agree. I don't think Goldie's an everyday average 35, unlike myself. I was a very average 35.
And I'm a very average to below average 40-year-old right now. So
I mean, and
Seth is the one guy who's trending above as, what, a 28-year-old?
Yeah, 28.
Yeah.
So Goldie played 158 games and hit 33 bombs. Goldie played 158 games and had 705 plate appearances when he was 28. Seth, how many plate appearances do you think you're up for this year?
Me?
Yeah. How's it going?
Like 35.
Okay. All right.
35.
Yeah, cool. Why not?
No, I was just baffled that I was asked how many at-bats I would be in the Major League.
What kind of season are you having this year? Do you feel like you're going pretty good? I mean, look at you now.
I have 38 stolen bases.
Hosting the show?
You're hitting leadoff, did you think? Back in January when this started.
Is he Brendan Donovan?
You know what? You are.
I was until 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. The hair was
and I lost
similar.
it.
You know, Brendan Donovan also proposed to his girlfriend in Times Square, too, so don't do everything that he does.
Are you saying young baseball players should maybe sow their wild oats? Is that what you're trying to
I just say, hey,
This is great. I told Sarah to tune in and everything.
I am a man that got engaged at 37, I think, for the first and only time. I promise you I won't be married twice. So I'm just saying, you take your time with it, baby.
You know what's funny about that? My whole life, when I was like in my teens, I always told myself, I think the biggest mistake that kids do, or not even kids, just, you know, around like college years, they put a number and age on when they're going to get married. Mine was 27 because my sister was 27 and my brother was 27 when they got married. And
well, some people do that on when they're going to die, too. Like, when my dad died when he was 60, whatever, it might be like, don't do that to yourself is what I'm saying. Don't let anybody else's path be your path, baby. I didn't think about anything like that when I didn't even know how do you get married? What do you do? How does it work? I'm still not 100% sure if I know.
See, I think that's cyclical because coming up, I never was somebody who wanted to get married early. And then I remember I moved here. I was about 26, 27. I was maybe pushing 28. And some of my friends, like a lot of my high school friends, got married early. Most of my college friends really waited a long time. I mean, I got married essentially at 35, and a lot of my buddies were right around 33, 34, 35. But for some reason, right around 28, some of my other buddies started to get married. And it wasn't like they got married right out of college, right, at 22, 23. They were getting married around 28. And I was thinking to myself, should I now be at that spot? You know, should I now be at that place in life? And for a couple months, I wondered that, but then it totally went away.
Yeah, it stopped.
And I waited about 6-7 years. And my wife, if she's listening, she said, yes, and you waited too long.
So were you under the boom when you did it? Like,
no,
were you feeling the crunch, or did you like, it's time?
Okay.
I got to do this.
I'm trying to do the math. I met my wife in 2013.
You guys met here?
We met in St. Louis. We met at Double D's in Brentwood.
All right.
The fantastic karaoke bar that no longer exists. That was the spot for all the young Cardinals players for many, many years because they all lived there in the Brentwood Villas. All those dudes back in the day. Mott, and Chris Perez, and Joe Kelly, Colby Rasmus.
Cardinals
Lynn.
late-in reliever bar.
Dude, it was a fun spot.
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
Yeah, really fun spot.
Was Mitchell Boggs there?
Mitchell Boggs
He had to
was
be
there.
there. There's no way those guys were there and he wasn't.
No, 100%. So I'm trying to think. This is 2022. So we got married in 17. But I proposed in 16. So I can see how, from a woman's perspective, if it took me close to 3 years to propose and then married at the 4-year mark, I could see how she wanted it 1 year earlier. But we were never going to break up or anything. So I was always planning on marrying her. So I think the timeline for her, she probably, if she's listening right now, she'll text me. I think she wanted it 1 year earlier. But hey, it worked out. It's all good.
I know for a fact that my wife is not listening, so I can throw together any story that I need to about it. But no, yeah. It's weird that way. Your late 20s are a melting pot that I don't think you can get ready for. And when you're in the middle of it, you definitely don't know how crazy it is compared to where you're at 10 years later, like I am now. And I can't remember any of it because it all feels like the same year. You can tell me something when I was 25. It could have been 31. I would still roughly feel the same way about it at this point.
Yeah, and for me personally, so what I was saying about how you said how you felt, Charlie, you felt rushed, like to an extent when you saw your friends getting married at a certain age, and you're like, okay, well, I need to,
not rush. Just started to think about it.
Okay,
His wife is listening.
It was higher
Nobody
consideration. It was higher consideration. I was kind of like that with school. I didn't graduate until I was 25. So when you see all your friends graduating when they're 22 and they have all these career jobs, they're working at Worldwide Tech or Edward Jones or, a certain place, you're kind of like...
And you're still drinking 4-packs of Miller High Life, and you're like, wait a minute, something ain't right here.
Living in my mom's basement. No, so everything, you kind of realize, I would rather have graduated when I did and knew what I wanted to do than graduated when I was 22 and not know what to do. Because there's a lot of people that just are told you got to get a degree at a certain time because it jumpstarts your career quicker. But a lot of people get a degree in business or whatever, and they don't know what they want to do. They have no idea where to go from there, and then they're unemployed for a whole year.
I think that college is an interesting thing because I don't think that going ahead for some of the generations we've got right now that are out there. There's going to be as much pressure from our generation to go to college, to find your path, do exactly this, as maybe there came from our parents' generation, because that was really kind of not the only way, but it was more surefire of a way to get off the ground, was to go to college, do this, do that. Whereas now, there's guys that are making TikTok videos that are like, what would I go to college for? What sense does that make?
And look at it from this standpoint. So if you're going to help your kids out with college, and my parents helped me out with college, they paid for about half my college. If you're going to essentially fund part of your kid's education, what if your kid wants to start his own business?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Honestly, at 18, what if your kid has a lawn care business, wants to grow it once he finishes high school, whatever it is, and if you're thinking, okay, I probably got to pay 10, 15, 20,000, whatever you're going to help your kid out for college. If you're going to pay that amount per year, you could help that person get his business off the ground.
Yeah, it might say,
or he can take a loan out. But either way, I agree with you. I enjoyed college. I really, really socially loved college, and from what I learned TV-wise, I think that's something you learn much more in the field working at a TV station. I loved going to all my classes for history because I really enjoy learning about history. But for what you pay, for the value you get back, especially now, that's why I always say, when I say college is a scam, I'm not saying that it has no value. I'm saying that college is a scam because what you get out of it right now versus the price is ridiculously out of whack.
Yeah, that I agree with. I absolutely agree with that. I think that doing what I do now, didn't go to school for it. I'm all right, though, And where school did help me for where I was at as an 18-year-old, it gave me a look at the world that was a little bit different than just my little slice of the world that I had where I grew up at. And that was important for me to be able to succeed in some of the rooms I've been in since then. So, I don't know. College is a tricky time. Your late 20s are a tricky time. I might argue that I learned as much about the world in my 27 to 30-year-old window as I did from my 18 to 22, where I was getting college off the ground, though.
And let's be real. When you're 18, 19, 20, you don't know anything.
No.
And I'm saying that to young me. You think you do. You really don't know anything. You don't know anything about the world. You don't usually have to pay any type of bills. You're still, for the most part, on scholarship a little bit here and there. Whether you're living with your parents, they're helping you out, this and that. Like when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, you just don't have a real grasp of what's going on and what's happening politically and what's going to affect you tax-wise and buying a home and getting loans and all that. You have no idea about any of those things.
And it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Like, let's take the esteemed Mr. Jansen, for example, who will tell you that he was just all over the place when he was 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 37 years old. No, but he was in the NHL and was still like, this is a crazy world that I'm trying to navigate. I was in Columbia, Missouri, and I was like, this is a crazy world I'm trying to navigate, where I'm trying to figure out ways to do knockoff schemes to get sandwiches to eat because I got $20 and I need to drink that, so I got to figure out another way to eat. These are the decisions that you're making at that point.
Hey, guys, we're going to wrap up this first hour.
That's enough.
Real quick.
That's enough.
Good talk.
Thank you.
Excellent
Thank you,
first hour of my debut hosting a show. We do have Randy on hold if he's still here. So, Randy, go ahead. You're on.
Hey, how you guys doing? Enjoying the show there. Hey, is Nolan Gorman a third baseman by trade, or is he more like an outfielder?
Third baseman.
Yes, third baseman draft.
There's another guy who's blocked by Mr. Arenado.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you. Now, Ariando is going to not opt out for next season, right? He's going to stay with the Cardinals, I guess?
Yeah, I guess he still, in theory, could. Did he say publicly he's not going to?
He didn't. Last year he said that he was going to stay. I was looking at his deal, and I didn't see the opt-out clause for this year, but, if this many people are talking about it.
Yeah, this is the last opt-out. So
okay.
He has, last I looked, he has 5 years and $144 million left on his deal with the Cardinals. So he would have to say, hey, I'm walking away from that, and I got to get more than 5 years and 144 to opt out.
Yeah, well, my question there is, just like you see Wainwright, Wainwright wants to, pitch as long as he could, but he's 40. These guys are going to start breaking down eventually. So I'm saying hopefully they can hold on to Gorman, and in case of Ariando or, Goldschmidt got to, retire or move out or whatever. At least they'll have those young guys in place. But another thing is, how come La Russa hasn't come out and said anything about Pujols' 700 home run? I mean, I thought they were pretty close, buddy, and all that kind of stuff. What's the matter with La Russa? Is he not coach anymore? Is he retired? Or is he just on the wane, or what's going on?
Well, he's the coach of the White Sox right now.
He's got some medical issues.
Yeah, he's had a little tough time.
He's got some medical issues there, Randy. So he stepped away as manager, and hopefully Tony is doing well though.
Yeah, but weren't the White Sox considered the front runner to win the division this year? I mean, they had all the talent from last year, and I mean, I don't know why did they implode? What happened there? Just La Russa just got tired of La Russa, or was he's just not good enough to be a coach anymore? All right, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Randy.
I think the White Sox just had one of those seasons. You know, the talent was definitely there. They had a lot of guys there. I think that was they were definitely the betting favorites for the Central, but they just had one of those years, and that's a division that when you look at that division, it looks a lot like the NL Central, honestly, where it's like, well, I think that the Cardinals are better than the Guardians. The Guardians. I almost called them the Commanders this time. I don't know what's going on.
They all sound like fake names from a Keanu Reeves movie where he was the quarterback of the Sentinels, and they're playing the Commanders and the Guardians in some type of weird football league in a movie like The Replacements or Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted the team names at this point. I maybe this is me being old. Maybe this is my upper 30s. There's no other names out there that I haven't heard that I think hasn't been used yet that needs a space.
Well, here's what stinks about it. They pick terrible names. Those are terrible names. They're the most boring, just cookie cutter, like an XFL team name before the XFL was cool. There's nothing. Look, I understand the Guardians with the statues there. If you're from Cleveland, you know about the transportation statues as you're coming in on the bridge. But they had a great name in the Spiders. They could have had the homage to the past. The Cleveland Spiders would have been a great name. Hell, I think the Washington football team, keeping it that, would have been better than the Commanders.
I agree.
Just keep it. That's unique to be the Washington football team. That's unique. Commanders is bland. It's boring. I don't even know what the logo is. You don't ever want to buy gear for the Commanders.
Because you're buying gear just in the color as opposed to what the actual logo is. I mean, well, in defense, if you look at some of the baseball names that we're used to, because they've been here for 70 or 80 years, White Sox, Red Sox.
But there's at least tradition there.
Well, tradition takes time, though. Maybe in 80 years, we're like those Guardians and their, 8 World Series that they've won. It helps to win to make your team better, too.
That's fair, but that also proves to you how much of a lack of creativity they had back in the day when they're forming names. What should we call our team? Well, I don't know. We have Red Sox on. You have White Sox, so that's pretty dull.